It's a wonderful thing that you're planning for retirement. But do you truly understand the vehicles in which you're invested? Greg Shepard knows TIAA, and he says there are 5 questions you should ask your financial advisor to make sure they are aligned with you and with your goals. But Greg, thinking about this, putting your advisor on the spot could be a little bit awkward, don't you think?
Not at all. And good to be here with you again, Patrice. Always enjoy talking about this stuff. But I tell you what, I've been doing this for 25 years, 25 years. And I get that question every now and again when I tell folks what to tell or ask their advisor, not necessarily the TIAA wealth managers, but any advisor in that regard. It's your money. Okay. And you got to be stern with that. It's your money. It's not their money. It's your money. And so if he or she, the advisor I'm speaking about, takes any offense or if you can sense any gray area, then there's your answer. You turn around and walk out the door, figuratively speaking, or literally speaking. So it's your money. You be stern, but the questions themselves are. You shouldn't be hesitant to ask these questions. But the better question in this regard in the podcast here, the episode is, what questions do I ask?
Yeah,
you don't know what you don't know. So we'll elaborate a little bit more on that and piggyback off some of those topics here.
All right. Well, there are 5 that we're going to address today. So what is number 1?
Sure. First question that comes to mind is, what is your investment philosophy and how does it align with my goals? Let me kind of clarify this though. Okay. So we'll take that in 2 parts. So what is your investment philosophy? So what we're asking here as the client, what is the advisor's investment philosophy? Now we got to be careful because there's a lot of keywords that a lot of folks in my industry use. I think you as a client, as a prospect, needs to maybe frame that question a little bit better in the sense that, what is your investment philosophy as an independent advisor? Meaning, are you as an advisor going to put me in a model that 300 of your other clients have? Or are you, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, are you going to customize this strategy given what my goals / needs are at retirement? And then you just sit back and listen, okay? Because a lot of folks in my industry, again, I've been doing this for 25 years, will have all these answers to these generic questions ready to roll. You practice it in my industry, and it comes off as salesy, all right? So what you're interested in as a prospect asking that first question is not necessarily that generic, what is your investment philosophy, but how do you operate in the sense that, is there somebody, big brother here telling you what to tell me as the prospect? Okay. So that's probably a better question to ask in that regard, rather than just a generic, what is your investment philosophy and how does it align with my goals?
And that does
that make sense?
It does. It does. And it also makes it more important to have an independent advisor.
It does. And I think we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit, because I think I'm going to touch upon that and maybe 1 or 2 questions here following.
All right. Now, what is question number 2?
Sure. Question number 2. How can I optimize my retirement income with my current TIAA allocation? Okay, again, this comes back to that independence. Okay, so if you're talking to, now we got to separate this. If you're talking to a TIAA advisor, wealth manager, that question is going to be different than a non-TIAA wealth manager. Okay, the reason I say that is if you hone in on the question, okay, how can I optimize my retirement income with my current TIAA allocation? So optimizing that retirement income with a TIAA wealth manager kind of translates into how many assets can we put into lifetime income. Okay, that's that TIAA traditional transition into lifetime income. Not necessarily a bad thing, but a great example is I just got done talking yesterday. Yes, my days kind of, summer months, they kind of all get convoluted. Yesterday, I believe, I talked to a person. She's going to retire early. Okay, she's 60, looking to retire at 62, right after 59 and a half, so probably 60, 61. A few $1 million over at TIAA. Now, I'm not demeaning her by any means intellectually, but she didn't have a clue, and by her own admission, didn't have a clue about retirement income. So she talked to the TIAA folks, and she asked a version of that question, how am I going to optimize my retirement income given the assets I have with you all being TIAA? So the advisor, the wealth manager over at TIAA, tried to probably successfully actually convince her to transition majority of her assets over to lifetime income. Okay. And then she found me on YouTube and we had a discussion. And I asked her if she had any idea about inflation and what that means negatively to her portfolio once she kicks in that lifetime income. Without going into a lot of details, the answer was no. It was kind of deer in headlights and a kind of an aha moment. And we did the retirement income illustrator and I showed her what I was talking about. Okay. So she really took back and she said, well, I've been talking to my TIAA wealth manager. And I said, the folks over in this case, TIAA and other folks at other RIA firms across the country, they're good people. Don't get me wrong. This industry is chock full of good people. It's what I always say, it's not the person you're talking to, it's the company that person works for or with. Okay. How do they operate? In this case, TIAA, where their bread is buttered, is lifetime income. Again, not a bad thing, but we got to be careful of how much we're going to initiate lifetime income depending upon how many assets you have. So again, we'll go back to the question here. How can I optimize my retirement income with my current TIAA allocation? This is where you got to do your own due diligence and really hone in. I'll tell you this, kind of the bottom line when I deal with folks that come on board here, we have 3 sources of income when the time comes. 1, we got some form of lifetime income if it makes sense for that individual. Okay, we have to figure out how much. And I have a spreadsheet that I've devised to help us determine what that is. So we have lifetime income. We have hopefully a form of Social Security when the time comes. And then income from interest producing investments, for the sake of this conversation, is going to be a tax deferred account, a rollover IRA. So 3 sources of income. So that's how I approach it as an advisor. But you really have to start off by educating yourself before you start asking that specific question. Hopefully, again, does that make sense?
It does. I can see how people would get confused, though. They really do have to sit down and know the differences and what it is exactly they want to learn.
Yeah. And maybe from a macro perspective, is take a step back and think about, okay, who am I talking to? Okay. Let's say I'm talking to a TIAA advisor. Well, it's a TIAA advisor. That person works for TIAA. Not a bad thing, but we have to be cognizant of that. So do they, being that advisor, are they going to, in a fiduciary manner, advise me, recommend things that may not be in TIAA's best interest, but yet in my interest, in my best interest at the same time? You see what I'm saying? So it doesn't make TIAA any money, but it is in my best interest to do whatever it is that needs to be done.
Which is what a fiduciary is supposed to do.
Which is what a fiduciary is supposed to do. Okay. So you really have to ask questions. And it's not offensive. Like, some folks are afraid to ask questions, because they think they'll look dumb. Okay. I'll go back to it's your money. I've been asked everything. Okay. There is no dumb question. And if nobody would ever tell you that it's a dumb question, but if you sense any, hesitation from the advisor, well, there's your answer. You don't want to work that person. Because part of my job is educating these folks. That's why they're hiring us, is they lack some form of education when it comes to this. All right. But again, I'll go back, long-winded here. Realize who you're talking to, the advisor, and who their employer is. And does that dictate some of the information being delved to you?
And if you have any doubts about that, what do you do?
Don't make it complicated. Just say thank you. And if you're doing a Zoom call, just be polite and say thank you. I'll think about it. However you want to word that. But remember, it's your money. Okay. It's not the advisor's money. So you are in control. You are in control. Okay. A lot of folks just get caught up in the whole scenario, and these advisors use these big words, these fancy words, and the folks that they're talking to, the prospects, don't have the necessary knowledge to ask the most appropriate questions.
Right. So, because you're fond of saying you don't know what you don't know.
What you don't know. But so take it upon yourself, be your own advocate, and do a little due diligence, even though you're hesitant to do so. Do some due diligence prior to speaking to an advisor.
Question number 3.
All right, I'll take this one. Let's see. Question number 3. I have it written down here. Are there any hidden fees or costs I should be aware of? This is a good question. A lot of folks. So there's only let me phrase it this way. This industry, again, 25 years here in the making, has evolved in a good way in the sense that costs/fees have really been crushed in a good way, down over the course of time. So there are really only 2 costs, maybe 3, that you should be familiar with. 1, how much does that advisor cost or charge? Okay. It's a very simple question. And I can't tell you time and time again, whenever I run into a prospect, maybe they're interviewing other people, which I highly encourage. You can also ask casually, well, what is that advisor charging you or going to charge you? And the answer is, I don't know. Or the answer is, I'm not sure. I couldn't really follow, because there's different ways to charge folks in my industry, these tiered asset levels. And I always tell folks, hey, you come on board here, I'm going to charge you this. That's as simple as I can make it. So if you get confused on how much that advisor is going to charge you, don't go that direction. Okay. So that's fee number 1. Fee number 2 is what's called the expense ratio of the underlying asset. Okay, so you're going to be invested in things, in investments, ETFs or mutual funds, or stocks don't have expense ratios. But I'm talking to the advisor here as a prospect, what's the average expense ratio of a portfolio that I'd be in? What does it look like? Give me an idea. And then just be quiet and let that advisor speak.
See what happens.
See what happens. Okay. And again, there's no gray area here. It's a very simple question. Okay. So if that advisor starts hemming and hawing and, well, it could be this, it could be that, you just know very simply, how much will my cost be in relation to the expense ratio? That's it. Okay. That should take about 5 seconds. Now, the next charge that one could occur are trading costs. Okay. So, for example, I custody my assets over at Charles Schwab that aren't at TIAA. Okay. So if I don't buy some of the more not appropriate, I could be charged $20 per trade if I buy certain investments over at Schwab. Okay. And we don't do that. All of our trades are free. But ask your advisor, hey, when we buy and sell investments, are there any trading costs associated with that? All right. And then again, should take about 5 seconds. It's not a very difficult question. Okay. So, and those are the 3 main, going back to my question here, those are the 3 main, hidden fees or costs that you should be aware of.
Okay. All right. Number 4, keep going. This is good. This is
number
good.
4. All right. Number 4.
Lots of notes here.
Yeah. Okay. How do you recommend, this is the prospect asking the advisor, how do you recommend balancing risk in the current market? I think I probably wrote these questions down actually, but a better question to ask is, how do you recommend balancing risk in evolving markets? And how do you communicate that to clients, to me as a prospect? So let me explain. Usually when you're dealing with retired folks, again, I'll go back to, you have 3 sources of income. You have Social Security, which you can't control. So that's fixed. We're done with that. Maybe some lifetime income. Again, you can't really control that. That's fixed for the most part. It's done. It's spoken for. Third piece of income is interest that I deal with here. Interest from income producing portfolios. Okay. So a good question to ask an advisor is, I have this income coming from this portfolio. Given interest rate environments, they change. We're about to go through a change here, pushing into 2026. How will my income change? How will these investments that produce income, how will they change or be negatively affected or positively affected, given the changing interest rate environment that is just that, ever changing? How do we navigate that? Then on top of that, piggybacking off that, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, how do you communicate to your clients when you're making changes and justifying those changes? Okay. Now, it's a loaded question. But again, part of what I do for a living is education. A lot of folks are not educated as they should be in the bond/income producing world. So I feel that it's part of my duties as an advisor. I throw out videos I've been kind of lazy on it this summer, but I'd say every 3 weeks-ish, depending upon what's going on economically, and show folks via some graphs I've created okay, this is going to happen to the Fed funds rate. Given that, this is going to transpire with that investment that we have, maybe in a negative way. So we're going to exit out of that investment and get into something else that produces similar type of interest. So that kind of communication, folks really appreciate. And I tell you what, from an advisor, if there's any advisors out there listening, that eases the need or desire for folks to call you as the advisor. So
I was thinking the same thing.
takes
Yeah.
away a lot of the necessary phone calls that I would ordinarily get just by communicating with folks via these videos I send out.
Just a sidebar here. Do you get a lot of questions when the market goes a little haywire?
On the stock side of things, yeah.
Yes.
So like 2020.
Bonds, I think bonds are another animal.
Yeah, they are. There's different economic things that can affect the bond market, stock market. I mean, you turn on CNBC or any financial news outlet. I always tell folks the first thing you're going to see, well, for the most part, you're going to see the Dow Jones, the S&P, and the NASDAQ because they're big numbers and they move a lot and they're fun and they're red, they're green, and everyone talks about that. What folks don't talk about is the bond market. But perfect example is April of this year, 2025. Market was down significantly. Okay, that was back on the Trump tariff thing and created some turmoil in the markets. I got a lot of phone calls and emails, all folks dealing with the stock market. Okay, and we're not going to get into the nuts and bolts of the actual strategies involved with that, but I don't recall exactly. Very few, if any, phone calls came from those that were actually taking income. Okay, they can sleep better at night. They're not associated with the stock market for the most part. They're associated with a boring, air quotes here, boring bond market that produces income. Okay. But I welcome all the phone calls. It doesn't bother me at all. I talk to folks. I talk to folks all the time.
Well, with the Fed and their decision making, bonds will see some movement, I predict.
You predict correctly. Yes.
Not saying what or where, but it'll move.
It'll move. It's a cycle. We're going to go through a cycle here in 2026. I'm sure we're going to talk about that at some other episodes. That's more some product information. I got to be careful about what I speak about, talk about in that regard. But, yeah, that's part of my job.
All right. We're up to number 5.
Number 5. Looking at my table here. Okay. What strategies do you suggest for tax efficiency in retirement? What strategies do you suggest for tax efficiency in retirement? This is actually it's a lot simple than what a lot of folks think. Because I get this question often. I have all this money. I'm going to take income. What's the most tax efficient way to take it? The government's going to get their money. Okay. That's why if there's not a lot, let's not try to be too creative here. Any income from tax deferred accounts, coming to you is going to be tax ordinary income. Okay. We can't get around that. Now we can do what a lot of folks are alluding to are Roth conversions. Okay. This is, again, a topic maybe for a different episode, but we do a lot of that. So there are ways you can strategize from a tax perspective on, different buckets of monies to take income from. Again, that can get complicated. There's something out there called a pro rata rule. I tell you what, folks, if you're listening to this, you're thinking about doing Roth conversions, look up what the pro rata rule is. A lot of folks out there will do these Roth conversions on their own, won't realize what I'm talking about, that pro rata rule, until they get audited, and it's a little too late. So make sure you know what you're doing. Those Roth conversions, they sound great, and they are if done properly. So tax perspective, of course, we coordinate with CPAs in that regard to just kind of give it the blessing, if you will, of some of the strategies that we implement. But I do like to see, I'd say for all folks out there, is some sort of Roth vehicle. Okay. A lot of employers, now here's, again, maybe a different episode. A lot of employers will have Roth vehicles in their retirement plan, unbeknownst to participants. Okay. So does your employer have a Roth vehicle associated with it in the 403B, 457, or 41A? Ask your employer or ask the vendor, or TIAA or Fidelity are the two top vendors. They'll know as well. And then you got to find out if it makes sense for you. It may not make sense for everybody. Okay. But yeah, we do a lot of just tax planning, if you will, which isn't really as difficult as it sounds.
Well, tax planning everything is planning, isn't it? retirement saving planning.
It is.
It's all there.
It's planning. And I tell you what, the folks that really need the help the most are the ones that are retired, taking income. The accumulation phase, socking money away, putting your money into stocks and bonds and all that fun stuff isn't really the more difficult part of the process. Time and time again, I have stories upon stories that these folks have amassed quite a bit of money, and they don't have, not demeaning anyone's intellect by any means, but they don't have a clue on how to take the money out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they've never had to do it before.
They've never done it before. And a lot of these folks are DIYers, which is great. They've been doing it themselves during the accumulation phase for their whole life, and they've done a good job. But the extraction part is a different ball game. It's a totally different ball game, and you've never done it before. Okay, so the fee. And we'll talk about fees again in other episodes. My opinion, just real quick, a snippet on fees with those advisor fees. No more than 1%, depending upon how much assets you have. I'm typically charging no more than 80 basis points, so 0.80%. But certainly no more than 1%. If and I see this again, time and time again, if your advisor is charging you 1.2% or north thereof, that is an archaic fee structure. Look elsewhere. I don't care how nice that advisor is or how long you've been with that advisor. It's your money. It's only to your detriment if you're charging or being charged, 1.2% or north thereof. All right. That's my opinion. 25 years though. Back in the day, I charged 1.2%, 15, 20 years ago. And again, now with fee compression across the board in my industry, max I'll charge is 0.8%.
That's a lot of stuff there.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff there, my man. Is there anything you did not mention that you want to make sure we do?
Oh gosh, whatever I didn't mention, I'm sure I'll mention on other episodes. I kind of shoot from the hip a lot of the times. Sometimes it gets me in trouble, sometimes not. I'm an open book. I'm very transparent. Patrice, I think as we get going on these episodes, my goal here is to share information with folks out there that are listening. That word transparency. I don't have a dog in the fight, in the sense that I do work with those that are over at TIAA. My business is doing fine. What I mean by that is that I'm not looking to, this isn't a sales pitch. This is information. This is education. And so the more education you have as a consumer, the better intelligent decisions you can make about your money going forward. So I tell you what, these episodes are going to be full of all kinds of information that you probably won't hear otherwise, because again, I don't necessarily have a dog in the fight. I'm just here to educate folks and give them as much information, tools as necessary so they can make an educated decision going forward.
It's amazing the closer you get to retirement, how much research you start doing.
Oh, yeah. And you go down a rabbit hole. I tell you what, you go down a rabbit hole, and with the advent of, technology with YouTube and the Reddit, and I get asked all kinds of interesting questions. And before I even ask where they found it, those questions, I already know the answer. It's typically, YouTube, Google, and so you got to be careful. Not every situation works for you. Okay, I'll put it that way. There's a lot of information out there. You
need the human touch.
Human touch. There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Greg, how can people reach you? Because boy, people can have questions now.
Oh gosh, like I've said in other episodes, the easiest way to reach me is email, and you can find that on my website, which is safinancialservices.com. But email is greg@shepardfinancial.com. Shepard is misspelled all the time. It is correctly spelled SHEPARD.com. If you're so inclined, phone still works here at the office, 913-521-2381, as I am in the Kansas City area.
All right, fantastic. So follow Greg's podcast so you know when the next episode is ready for you. You're not going to miss anything. And of course, share it with others. Let them know that you've got an asset here, okay? Thanks for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for listening to TIAA Simplified. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Visit our website at www.safinancialservices.com or give us a call at 913-521-2381. And don't forget to click the follow button so you never miss an episode. S&A Financial Services, Inc. is a registered investment advisor. Content presented is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as investment advice or as an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Always consult with your tax advisor or attorney regarding your specific situation.